Good evening. How's everybody doing? It's great to be learning with you on a Wednesday night. Let's light up the darkness. New wisdom candle. In fact, I just had to open a new package of these candles. They're 6-hour candles, and they come 45 in a box. And I think this is like our 5th or 6th box of them. It's a lot of hours we've been learning together. Isn't that wonderful? Who is with us on this evening? Yehuda in South Carolina, James in Indianapolis, Stephen in New Hampshire, Sharon in New Jersey, Bella in Florida, Ryan, wishing everyone a good evening, PK in Colorado, Bill in Missouri, Lucy in Minnesota, Tom, wishing everyone a freiliche Mittwoch, right? A happy Wednesday. Stefan says Earth. Okay, we're both fellow citizens of Earth. Karen in Northern California, Nancy in North Carolina. Ryan, 45 in a box. How big is the box? It's on the floor over there. It's like, small shoebox. Peggy says, a lot of hours with family. Amen. This is our learning family. Over there on the YouTube side, Aoife in Florida. Welcome, everybody. So good to have you with us. Okay, we're opening a new chapter. Oh, one second. Tonight's episode of AT Daily is sponsored by Marie Latour in loving memory of her mom, Maud Latour, who passed away 2 months ago. May Maud's memory always be for a blessing. May her soul have a great elevation in the world of souls. And we say amen. And Marie, thank you so much for enabling us to share more Torah with more people around the world. May you and all your loved ones be showered in blessings. And we say amen. If you'd like to sponsor an episode of AT Daily, donate.accidentaltalmudist.org. It's such a good time. We're doing our annual campaign right now that we couldn't do in December when we were shooting the movie. It really comes in handy to have extra donations so that we can keep this going, get the AT app built, and share all the wonderful kinds of content that we share with everybody. Nina works so hard on those 2 Torah short vorts, right? Short bits of Torah that she's been publishing every week. The hero stories, the table for 5, the humor, this class. We really appreciate your support. Nina put the link in the comments, but it's donate.accidentaltalmudist.org. Okay, we are in Tractate Nazir, the 17th volume of the Talmud. These are the laws of the vow of nazirus, an optional vow, but if you take it, the Torah spells out how you shall take it. General parameters, you're vowing not to partake of any product of the grapevine, not to cut your hair, not to become impure for the dead, and to bring the offerings of the Nazir when the term of Nazirus ends. Today we're opening chapter 3 here in this tractate, and our daf is page 16, right? Tes Zion, page Tes Zion. Page 16. You might have thought it would be Yud Vav, but those are 2 letters of God's 4-letter name. And so 16 is done, instead of 10 and 6, it's done as 9 and 7. That's why it's page Tes Zion. Okay, chapter 3, we're going to continue the same kind of discussion we've been doing in chapter 2. How long is an unspecified term of Nazirus? What happens when there are consecutive terms of Nazirus? What happens when a term of Nazirus is interrupted? But particularly if it's interrupted because the person becomes impure for the dead. And interestingly, the Torah is quite specific about this, right? The Torah in the written law says, Book of Numbers, chapter 6, verses 9 through 12. And if a man dies very suddenly beside him, and he, the Nazir, defiles his consecrated head, he shall shave his head on the day of his purification. On the 7th day shall he shave it. And on the 8th day he shall bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons to the priest to the door of the tent of meeting, right? Either the tabernacle in the desert, and for the first few hundred years, that we were in the land of Israel after Joshua led us in. And then once the temple was built, the temple of Solomon, the first temple, and eventually the second temple, they would bring their offerings there. And the priest shall prepare one for a sin offering and the other, these two birds, right? One for a sin offering, the other for a burnt offering, and make atonement for him, this Nazir who became impure for the dead. He's prohibited to do that while he's a Nazir, but it happened by accident, right? Somebody died suddenly beside him and he touched that corpse. Okay. So and that is a transgression, even though you didn't intend to do it. It is. So you have to bring these bird offerings, and the one for a sin offering, one for a burnt offering, and they shall make atonement for him. Why? For he sinned by the soul, and he shall sanctify his head on that day, and he shall consecrate to the Lord the days of his nazirus. And he shall bring a lamb in its first year for a guilt offering. But the first days, right, the days he's already counted, shall be void because his consecration was ritually impure. No one told him he has to consecrate himself and hold himself to this higher level of sanctity. He did it. Now he's held to that standard. He became impure by a corpse. He has to bring all these offerings and then reset the timer, as it were, reset the calendar and count the days again that he vowed to be a Nazir. All right, that's the Torah passage. Now we start chapter 3, Mishnah number 1. By the way, today's daf is quite short, so we're going to keep it moving, but even though this is sort of like technical laws of nazirus and how many days before and how many days after, etc., we're learning Torah lishma, learning Torah for the sake of learning Torah. So let's dig in and really try to understand what we're being told here. It's holy work. So, Mishnah number 1 of chapter 3. One who said, I am hereby a Nazir, without specifying how long his term of nazirus would last, shaves his head on the 31st day after the start of his nazirus, as an unspecified term of nazirus lasts 30 days. We've said that many times. Here's the source, Mishnah number 1 of chapter 3. And if he shaved on the 30th day, he has fulfilled his obligation, right? You're vowed to, normally, if you say, I'm here by Nazir, and you haven't said anything else, so you're vowing to do that for 30 days, you might think it's 30 full days, so if you shave your head, right, like ending your Nazirus, in the middle of the 30th day, you might think that you didn't fulfill your obligation. But the Mishnah is telling us you did, unless... And if he shaved his head, and if he shaved on the 30th day, he has fulfilled his obligation. But if he explicitly said, I am hereby a Nazir for 30 days, right? Unspecified term is 30 days. But if he actually said, I am a Nazir for 30 days, then if he shaved on the 30th day, he has not fulfilled his obligation. Why? Since the Nazirus would have been for 30 days, even without him stating for 30 days. This addition that you specify 30 days indicates that he vows to complete a full 30 days as a Nazir, right? If you just say, I'm here by Nazir, you're Nazir for 30 days. You shouldn't shave till the 31st day, but if you shaved on the 30th day, you fulfilled your obligation. If you say, I am a Nazir for 30 days, then you have to complete a full 30 days, and you shave on the 31st day. But if you shaved on the 30th day, you interrupted your Nazirus. You have not fulfilled your obligation. One who accepted 2 terms of Nazirus, right? Now, that's what we've been talking about. The one who says, I'll be a Nazir when I have a son, and I'll be a Nazir right now. He just specified 2 terms. So one who accepted 2 terms of Nazirus shaves at the close of the first Nazirus on the 31st day. That's the appropriate way to do it. Do the 30 days and then shave on the 31st day. And at the close of the second term on the 61st day, since his second term of Nazirus begins after shaving on the 31st day. That day counts, right there we count part of a day as a day. So after he shaved his head, if it's consecutive terms, now he begins that second term. So the 31st day of the first term also counts as the first day of the second term. And then the 31st day after that, right, that would be the actual 61st day, not the 62nd day. Since the second term of Nazirus begins after shaving on the 31st day, the 61st day of the first term is the 31st day of the second term. And if he shaved for the first term on the 30th day, right, which was the less perfect way to do it, but if you only said, I'm here by a Nazir, and you shaved on the 30th day, you have fulfilled your obligation, so that's okay. And if he did that, then the second term begins on that day, and he can shave on the 60th day, kind of following the same procedure he followed the first time. And that, but I'm sorry, the 60th day is actually the 31st day after the start of the second term. And if he shaved for the second term on day 60 minus 1, he has fulfilled his obligation, as this is the 30th day of the second term. So in both cases, if you didn't specify a full 30 days and you shave on the 30th day, less than ideal, but you fulfilled your obligation. And this testimony was attested to by Rabbi Papias, who heard from his, Papias, right? This was attested to by Rabbi Papias, who heard from his teachers with regard to one who vowed to observe 2 terms of Nazirus, that if he shaved for the first term on the 30th day, he shaves for the second term on the 60th day, and if he shaved on the second term, for the second term on the day 60 less 1, he has fulfilled his obligation, because the 30th day of the first term of Nazirus counts as part of his tally for the second term. Who was this Rabbi Papias? Interesting figure, comes up a few times in the Talmud. We don't know much about him, except that he was alive when the second temple was standing and was able to transmit traditions which he witnessed with his own eyes. Now, one who said, I am here by a Nazir, without further specification, so it took on a 30-day term, if he became ritually impure, tameh, through contact with a corpse on the 30th day of his term of Nazirus. So it negates the entire tally. Interesting, right? Because if he shaved on the 30th day, having not made a specific, he never said 30 days specifically. He just said, I'm a Nazir. So we just learned that if he shaved on the 30th day, he has fulfilled his obligation, right? He was a Nazir for 30 days. That part of the 30th day counts as the 30th day before he shaved. And then when he shaved, he didn't, cancel or negate anything. But if he became impure on that day by touching a corpse, then it negates the entire tally, and he must start his Nazirus afresh. Rabbi Eliezer says it negates only 7 days, which he must observe until his purification. Right, to become purified from a corpse. When you touch a corpse, it's like the most severe form of tuma, and it takes 7 days, right, where you have to, I think, immerse in the mikvah on the 3rd and 7th day. You have to be sprinkled with the waters of purification, which we don't have anymore, but existed at the time that the temple was standing, and it was water mixed with the ashes of the red heifer. And that's the only way to become pure. And it's a 7-day process. So you're going to need 7 days to become pure again. Those 7 days don't count in your Nazir. So Rabbi Eliezer says, okay, if he became impure by touching a corpse before his Nazirus ends, you don't lose all the days. You just lose the 7 days that you need to become pure again. And if he said, I am hereby a Nazir for 30 days. Okay, so this guy needs a full 30 days. And then he became impure on the 30th day. So everyone agrees that it negates the entire tally. And if he said, I'm hereby a Nazir for 100 days. If he became impure on the 100th day, it negates the entire tally. Rabbi Eliezer says it negates only 30 days. And he observes the final 30 days again. If he became impure on the 101st day before bringing his offerings, it negates only 30 days, but does not negate all of the observed days. And Rabbi Eliezer says it negates only 7 days. Right? So what is the law? Even if a Nazir became ritually impure by touching a corpse on the final day of his term, his entire tally is negated. He must bring the offerings of impurity and start counting his nazirus again, all over. Even if he did all 100 days and then he became impure by touching a corpse, he has to count 100 again. And this is in accordance with the unattributed opinion in the Mishna. And we're not surprised that this is such a stringent. You might have thought, well, come on, why negate all 100 days? Let him just lose the 30 and then he can do 30 again like an unspecified term. But we read in the written Torah, Numbers chapter 6, verses 9 through 12, that if a Nazir becomes contaminated, becomes impure, tameh, by touching a corpse, his tally of days is negated, right? And he has to start over again. Big motivation to not take on a vow of nazirus, and if you do, don't take it longer than 30 days. Who do you think you are? What do you have to prove? Why are you trying to be so holy? It's unnecessary and discouraged. Okay, that's our Mishnah, Mishnah number 1 of chapter 2. Here's the Gemara of chapter 3. Here's the Gemara. The Mishnah taught, one who said, I am hereby a Nazir, and he became ritually impure on the 30th day, it negates the entire tally. And Rabbi Eliezer says it negates only 7. Now the Gemara explains, and right now we're already on 16b. Rabbi Eliezer holds that when anyone becomes ritually impure, tameh, after the completion of his term of nazirus, but before he brought his offerings, right? So he counted all the days in purity. Now he completed the days, but he still has to bring the offerings that will, finish the process, as it were. So Rabbi Eliezer says, if you finished your days, but then you became impure before you brought your offerings, so only 7 days are negated. And the 30th day is after the completion of his term. The Mishnah teaches that one who said, I'm hereby Nazir for 30 days and became impure on the 30th day, it negates the entire tally. Rabbi Eliezer does not disagree in this case, since it is an instance where the person explicitly said that he accepts nazirus on himself a full 30 days, and his ritual impurity therefore occurs during the days of nazirus. And the Mishnah also taught that if one said, I am hereby a Nazir for 100 days, and he became impure on the 100th day, it negates the entire tally. Rabbi Eliezer says it negates only 30, and this entire Mishnah should be explained as we discussed it in accordance with the opinion of Bar Pada and Rav Matana, which we encountered earlier on pages 5a and 6b. That's the Gemara. Here's Mishnah number 2 of chapter 3. One who took a vow of nazirus while in a cemetery. Now, this is a crazy hypothetical, right? A big part of becoming a Nazir is that you are elevating your level of sanctity and saying you're going to be in some way similar to a Kohen, in the sense that you will not become impure for the dead. You're going to keep a distance between yourself and that, primary source of tuma, corpse tuma. Right? So why would you take such a vow while you're standing in a cemetery where by definition you're over corpses and becoming tameh for the dead, becoming tameh with corpse tuma, since you're standing over graves? But we still have this hypothetical. So one who took a vow of nazirus while in a cemetery, what happens? If he becomes a Nazir when he takes that vow, then he's immediately impure. Like he never observed even one day. He never even had a moment of being in a state of purity because he's standing on a corpse in a grave at the moment he takes the vow. So what does the Mishnah say? One who took a vow of nazirus while in a cemetery, even if he was there for a full 30 days without leaving the cemetery, those days that he spent in the cemetery do not count as part of his tally, since his nazirus has not yet gone into effect. And he therefore does not bring 3 offerings of impurity, the 2 birds and the lamb, that are brought by a Nazir when rendered ritually impure by contact with a corpse, despite having been in the cemetery, because he never became a Nazir. He took the vow, but he never became a Nazir because he's standing in the cemetery. He doesn't become the Nazir until he leaves the cemetery. If he left the cemetery and then he entered it again, well, then those days do count as part of his tally, meaning the nazirus takes effect, and then because he went back into the cemetery, he has to bring the offerings of impurity for his re-entrance. Rabbi Eliezer says, this law does not apply to one who entered the cemetery on the first day that he left it, as it is stated with regard to the laws of a ritually impure Nazir, but the first days shall be void, right? The days he's already counted impurity shall be void, which indicates that he does not bring the offerings until he has first days of purity during which he observed his nazirus, right? So whether he never left the cemetery or he left and came back in on the same day, that guy never had a full day of nazirus impurity, so he doesn't have to bring the offerings because he didn't really become a nazir yet. That's Mishnah number 2 of chapter 3. Here comes the Gemara. It was stated that the Amoraim, the rabbis of the Gemara, disagree with regard to one who vowed to be a Nazir while in a cemetery. Who's disagreeing? Our good friends Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan said, nazirus takes effect for him. How could Rabbi Yochanan say that? He becomes a Nazir when he takes that vow while standing in a cemetery? Not exactly. He's bound by the vow, but he doesn't become a Nazir yet. So Rabbi Yochanan is going to say, if you take that vow while you're standing in a cemetery, it doesn't kick in until you leave the cemetery. But as soon as you leave the cemetery, it will kick in. Reish Lakish would say, if you took that vow while you're standing in a cemetery, it's a ridiculous vow and it's nullified immediately because you didn't do anything. You didn't take a vow that was even possible to put into effect. Who's the law going to follow? As usual, Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says nazirus takes effect. Reish Lakish says nazirus does not take effect for him. The Gemara clarifies their respective opinions. Rabbi Yochanan, who said nazirus takes effect for him, holds that from the moment he accepts nazirus upon himself, it is pending. It's like a pending deposit, right? You know somebody deposited money in your bank account, but it hasn't hit yet, right? So it's like a pending vow of nazirus, so that when it is found that he is in a state of ritual purity, then it takes immediate effect, right? Once he leaves the cemetery, and presumably if he became tameh for the dead, he's got to leave the cemetery, become purified, right? Go through the 7-day purification. Then he's finally ritually pure again, and then the nazirus will kick in for the vow that he took while he was standing in the cemetery. And Reish Lakish said that nazirus does not take effect for him at all. Consequently, if he again said after leaving the cemetery that he accepts a vow of nazirus, then it would take effect for him. But if he does not repeat his vow, he never becomes a nazir based on a vow that he spoke while standing in a cemetery, according to Reish Lakish. But the law is like Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan raised an objection to the opinion of Reish Lakish from the Mishna. One who took a vow of nazirus while in a cemetery, even if he was there for a full 30 days without leaving, those days that he spent in the cemetery do not count as part of the tally, since his nazirus has not yet gone into effect. And he therefore does not bring the offerings of impurity despite having been in a cemetery. Rabbi Yochanan infers from this, it is the offerings of impurity that he does not bring, right? Because when a Nazir becomes impure, he has to bring special offerings for that, 2 birds and a lamb. Then he, gets himself pure again, has, brought the offerings that he was obligated to bring. Then he starts counting his days again, and when he finally completes his nazirus in purity, then he'll bring the offerings of completion. Those are different than the offerings for impurity. So Rabbi Yochanan is saying that this man does not bring the offerings of impurity despite having been in a cemetery because he never had any days of purity before them. Rabbi Yochanan infers from this, it is the offerings of impurity that he does not bring. But as far as the issue of nazirus taking effect, it does take effect for him. Reish Lakish said to Rabbi Yochanan, it means that he is not included in the law of prohibited ritual impurity, and therefore he is not included in the law of the offerings. He is not a Nazir at all. Rabbi Yochanan raised an objection to the opinion of Reish Lakish from what was taught in a Baraisa in the Tosefta 2:14. One who was impure and took a vow of nazirus, must still observe the laws of a Nazir. He is prohibited from shaving and from drinking wine and from becoming impure from a corpse. And if he shaved or if he drank wine or if he became impure from a corpse, he incurs the 40 lashes administered to one who actively transgresses a Torah prohibition, right? So if you took your vow of nazirus while you are impure, right? While you are impure. The whole idea of nazirus is that you're going to be pure and held to a higher standard of purity. So you shouldn't take that vow while you're impure, but you did. So if you take that vow while you're impure, it won't take effect until you become pure again. Nonetheless, during that period of your impurity, since you took that vow, you still can't drink wine, and you still can't shave your head, and you still can't become impure from other sources of impurity. And if you do, you're subject to lashes for violating a Torah prohibition. And again, lashes are only administered when a person is warned, if you do such and such, you will receive lashes. And then he does it anyway, right away after receiving the warning, and this whole thing happened in front of two witnesses. So lashes were rarely ever administered for violating these kinds of prohibitions, but the point is the same. Now, Rabbi Yochanan asks, granted, if you say that nazirus takes effect despite his ritual impurity, that is the reason he incurs the 40 lashes, similar to any nazir who transgresses the prohibitions of nazirus. But if you say that he never became a nazir at all, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, right, Reish Lakish, if you say he never became a Nazir at all, why does he incur 40 lashes? Now we're at the top of 17a, and Reish Lakish responded with, what are we dealing here in this baraisa? With one who left and entered, meaning that after leaving the cemetery and purifying himself, he then vowed again to be a Nazir and subsequently re-entered the cemetery. Which would seem to, that case is such a different case because, according to Reish Lakish, of course he became a Nazir after he left the cemetery, became pure, and took another vow. It has nothing to do with the first vow. He became a Nazir, according to Reish Lakish, because he left the cemetery, got pure, and now in a state of purity, took the vow, the only vow that counts. So according to Reish Lakish, that original vow didn't count, but for him to make sense of this other baraisa that says that person who takes a vow of nazirus while impure for whatever reason, that he still held to the rules of nazirus, it's not a good argument for Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan makes a better point. Now, I'm almost done. Got questions or comments? Get them in. I said it would be a short class. Rabbi Yochanan raised another objection to Reish Lakish's opinion from a different source. The difference between a ritually impure person who took a vow of nazirus and a ritually pure nazir who became impure is only the following law. If a ritually impure person took a vow of nazirus, his 7th day of purification counts as part of his tally of his term of nazirus, since he starts counting his term of nazirus as soon as he becomes pure. Right? According to Rabbi Yochanan, he was impure when he took the vow. So the vow doesn't kick in yet in terms of counting days, although it does kick in terms of he can't drink wine, he can't shave his head, etc. But he can't start counting days until he's pure. Once he goes through his purification, if it's daytime, right, then whatever, it doesn't even matter if it's 1 hour before sunset, that's going to count as one of the days toward his tally of days. But with regard to a Nazir who was in a state of ritual purity, and who then became impure, having already counted pure days, his 7th day of purification does not count as part of his tally. Rather, he starts counting his days of nazirus from the following day, which is the day on which he brings his offerings. Right? He has to bring those offerings because he became impure while he was a nazir. And if it enters your mind that a vow of nazirus stated while ritually impure does not take effect, why does the baraisa state that the 7th day counts as part of his tally, indicating that the nazirus takes effect without a need for him to restate his vow? Rabbi Yochanan is just arguing very skillfully. I think he's got Reish Lakish. He's got him up against the ropes, And we know the law comes out like Rabbi Yochanan, so you can see that this argument is a good, effective argument to handle Reish Lakish's objections. All right, let's see if you've got some questions or comments here on Nazir, page 16. Tom, what if you don't shave for several days after your nazirus ends, which could certainly happen for one reason or another? And it sounds like my sense is that if your nazirus ends, your days of nazirus ended, you still owe your offerings. You still owe to shave, right? Now you can properly, if it was a 30-day term, you should shave on the 31st day and bring your offerings that day. Okay, well, maybe you weren't in Jerusalem. Maybe you didn't have a razor in the house. So a few more days go by. I think that's fine, right? The question is, during those days, before you shave and before you bring your offerings, what happens if you become impure? That's what we've been studying. Some would say you lose that day. Some say you lose 7 days. Some say you have to start over. And likewise, can you drink wine during that period? I think we encountered that law, and I'm just not sure what we said. So certainly it would be ideal if you could, if you could shave post haste after you finish completing your days. But if you don't, I think it behooves you to abstain from becoming impure for the dead and from drinking wine until you shave and bring the offerings. Jonathan, I may have missed this in the Torah references, but maybe it is okay to ask a dumb question or two. So, no dumb questions. The only dumb question is the one you don't ask, right? There's no such thing as a dumb question because we're all struggling to understand, and these concepts are anything but easy. So, Jonathan's first question. When we talk about shaving, we are talking about head and beard, or just talking about head? It seems to me that we're talking about head and beard. And also, a woman can become a nazir. So, for sure, I think we're talking about the head. I don't think they need to shave the entire body, like leg hair, eyebrows, all of that. I think we're talking about head and beard. Definitely head. Definitely head. And I think we're going to encounter more specifics about the shaving process itself later in the tome. So stay tuned for that. And you ask, women can be a nazira? Yes, a woman can be a nazira. Yes, she can. Again, we don't do this anymore because the temple is not standing. We can't bring offerings. So if we become impure in the middle or we want to complete the nazirus, can't do it. And that's why we don't take this vow anymore. We could take a similar vow that we will abstain, from wine, for example, and then you're held to that vow unless a halachic authority dissolves it for you. But generally speaking, we say bli neder anytime we're, even possibly saying words that could constitute a vow because our sages discourage taking vows, right? If you take a vow, you've added an additional law for yourself in the sense that if you take an actual vow and then you don't fulfill it, it's a sin, right? So that's why the sages said, don't put yourself in a situation where you could come to transgress. Don't take vows. You can definitely do everything in your power to make sure you're a person of your word and you're going to fulfill your plans and promises and obligations properly. But if we're talking about something that is not a commandment, don't take a vow to do it because then you could put yourself in a situation of becoming a transgressor. Tom, if the Torah explicitly specifies, why does the rabbi disagree? Not sure what the context was. The Torah specifies that you will negate the tally of the days counted before. But how do we count those days is what they're disagreeing about. Lucy, when the Nazir re-enters the cemetery, does that not interrupt his Nazirus? Then he has to get pure. Yeah, exactly. When he was standing in the cemetery and took the vow can't start, right? It takes effect on him in the sense that once he becomes pure after leaving the cemetery, going through a purification process, and then becoming a person in a state of purity, then his nazirus will kick in. We follow Rabbi Yochanan in that. If he then re-enters the cemetery, right, he was a nazir in a state of purity who entered a cemetery, so he's got to bring the offerings of impurity. The one caveat to that was he took the vow while standing in the cemetery. He left the cemetery. He went through a 7-day purification process. Then he becomes pure. On the same day he became pure, he re-enters the cemetery. He never had a full day of purity, and that's why he would, in that situation, not be obligated to bring the offerings of impurity because he never had days of purity before that. And finally, Sharon, if they shave the head, do they preserve the payas? As I was saying that, I was thinking exactly that question. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that. That's why I was thinking, well, maybe they don't shave the beard or the payas. They just shave the top of the head. I don't know. We're going to find out. I'm sure we're going to find out during our journey. And so, Jonathan, last question. So with women, the 30th day may be a problem. Or the 30 days may be a problem unless menses does not affect the ritual impurity in the same way a cemetery does, or only after menopause. No, because I think what we're saying there is so if she has menses, she's in a state of ritual impurity, but not impurity of a corpse, right? The Torah only talks about impurity of a corpse as canceling the days and triggering an obligation to bring offerings. I do think that if you become some other kind of tameh, right, that you came into contact with a dead creeping thing, or you had, you menstruated if you're a woman, or, a man became a zav, through a gonorrheal discharge. All those things would render you impure. You came in contact with a person who was impure. My sense is, I'm not sure, we're gonna learn more about this in the days to come, but my sense is those days won't count. But you don't negate the days that came before that like you would if you touch a corpse, because the Torah says that those are the days, that's what cancels the days already counted. Becoming impure just means that the days of your impurity, where the impurity is not from a corpse, those days don't count. But as soon as you become pure again, then you could start counting again, pick up where you left off. That's my sense of it. I'm not a rabbi. I'm certainly not an expert in this body of law, but that's my sense of where we are so far. Okay, my friends, that's what I've got for us tonight. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow night, Thursday, the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific, for Nazir, page 7.